shadowed seas of Nesmos, where mercy is a myth and the waves drink blood as readily as rum, sails Captain Vanner Muse, master of the Leviathan, breaker of curses, and wanderer between worlds. Sun-kissed and scar-clad, this pirate has stared into the abyss and brought back its secrets. Tonight, his tale continues.
The salt wind clawed at the mist-shrouded shores of Harrow's Cove like the last breath of a drowning man, carrying the reek of tar, rotting fish, and the iron tang of old blood. Vanner Muse strode through the narrow lanes of the pirate town, his sun-browned skin marked by the lash of 1,000 storms, his black hair braided with shark teeth and silver rings that clinked like distant chain-shot. The Leviathan's captain moved with the easy menace of a man who had stared into the void between worlds and sailed back with its secrets tattooed on his soul. Lanterns guttered in the fog, illuminating faces scarred by cutlass and cannon, eyes hollow from grog and greed. But none of them mattered tonight. He saw the skeleton first. Captain Karsh sat alone at a splintered table dragged onto the black sand of a secluded beach, where the surf hissed like dying serpents. Nothing remained of the man but yellowed bones wrapped in tattered crimson coat and breeches eaten by worms and time. A tricorn hat, frayed to threads, perched on his bare skull. Before him rested a bottle of rum, dark as congealed blood, and 2 mismatched glasses, one already filled with salt. The undead captain stared at the rum as though it were the only star left in a sky that had betrayed him long ago. Once, Karsh had been the terror of the Nesmos Sea. His name had been a curse whispered in every port, from the Bone Reefs to the Crimson Straits. Galleons struck their colors at the sight of his black sails. Kings paid tribute in gold and daughters. But he had slain the wrong man in the wrong battle. An old witch's lover, and her dying scream had woven a curse tighter than any noose. Now he was chained to this island, flesh long rotted away, soul still screaming inside a cage of bone. Sailors once sought his counsel, his favor, his black wisdom. Time had devoured even that. He was a ghost story now, told to frighten cabin boys. The price of absolute power, the rot that greed leaves behind when the meat is gone. Vanner approached without hesitation, boots crunching on shells and shattered coral. He dropped into the opposite chair, the wood groaning like a hanged man. Karsh's empty sockets lifted. No smile was possible, only the slow tilt of that skull in acknowledgement, the faint rattle of vertebrae. "What are you doing out here, old wolf?" Vanner asked, voice low as distant thunder. Karsh's jaw worked, the sound like dry twigs snapping underfoot. "A crate washed ashore this morning. Rum, real rum, the kind we bled for." The words scraped out, hollow yet heavy with memory. I felt the old thirst rise in me, Muse, like a blade between the ribs. I remember how it tasted. Gods, how it tasted. Fire and honey and the kiss of distant spice islands. It burned down the throat like the first cannon flash of battle, sharp, alive, promising oblivion and glory in the same swallow. It loosened the chains on a man's heart, made the blood sing, the senses roar. Women looked prettier, gold heavier, the sea itself less cruel. 1 glass and you were a king again. 2, and the dead stayed quiet. He gestured with a bony claw at the untouched bottle. Now I sit here and watch it. The color, the way the light dies inside the glass. I can smell the ghost of it, but my tongue is dust and my belly is a grave. No warmth, no fire, just the echo of what I lost. A long pause, the surf filling it like mocking laughter. No one comes anymore. The young ones fear the sight of me. The old ones have forgotten I exist, so I share it with no one but the gulls and the tide. Vanner nodded once, the silver rings in his braids catching the lantern light like dying stars. Would you prefer to be alone with your thoughts, then? Karsh's skull shook slowly, the motion deliberate, almost regal in its ruin. I have been alive too long, Muse, and alone far longer than that. The years pile up like ballast in a sinking hull. Company from Captain Vanner Muse of the Leviathan. That I welcome, even if it is only bones and bad memories. He turned the hollow gaze toward the veiled horizon, where the mists boiled and the sea murmured secrets no living ear could bear. I know you left the planet. The waves told me. They always tell me everything now. Every mutiny, every sack of gold, every keel that kisses a reef. You sailed beyond Nesmos. Tell me of it. Vanner leaned forward, elbows on the scarred table. I learned the way from Captain Mojo of Earth, in a tavern that smelled of palm oil and gunpowder. When the stars align just right and the astral waves run high, like black mercury under a blood moon, you can slip the veil. The Leviathan rides them like a lover. I've walked the white sands of Nassau, where the rum flows freer than blood and the women laugh like they've never known chains. I've tasted the sweet hell of Jamaica, where the jungles scream with life and the ports burn with every vice a man can buy. Borinquen, God's Borinquen. Mountains like green knives against the sky, and the sea so clear you can see the wrecks of empires on the bottom. Places where a captain can breathe air that hasn't been poisoned by curses. Karsh's bony fingers drummed once on the table, a sound like knuckles on a coffin lid. Deep in the sockets, something ancient flickered. I never tasted those winds, never felt a deck roll under me that wasn't bound to this damned rock. I wish I could sail one more time, feel the spray sting what's left of my face, hear the canvas crack like thunder. Board a fat merchantman with cutlass in hand and the crew howling behind me. Taste the smoke and the copper of fresh slaughter. Dance the hornpipe on a captured quarterdeck while the defeated captain kneels in his own piss. One more chase across open water, one more storm that tries to swallow me whole and fails. One more time. The words trailed into the mist, heavy as anchor chain dragging across a dead man's chest. The sea answered with a low, hungry growl against the shore. Vanner's hand rested on the hilt of his saber. Is there a way to break the curse? Karsh's laughter came then, dry, rattling, the sound of bones shifting in a shallow grave. The sea always tells me no. Every dawn it whispers the news of the world beyond these mists, fleets burning, treasures rising, empires cracking like eggshells. Every night it reminds me I will never see them, never taste them, never bleed for them again. He leaned closer, the tattered coat flapping like a wounded bat. I would give anything for one more fight. One more bloody, screaming battle where steel sings and men die honest. One more victory to celebrate with rum burning down a throat that still knows how to feel it. Vanner understood. The weight of it settled in his gut like ballast stones. He rose to leave. Karsh's skeletal hand shot out, not fast, but certain, sliding one of the glasses across the table with a scrape of bone on wood. The empty sockets fixed on Vanner's face. "Drink with me, Captain." Vanner Muse reached for the bottle, his fingers closed around the neck. He pulled the cork. It came free with a soft, wet pop, like the sound of a soul remembering it was once alive. The cork came free with a sigh like a slit throat. Vanner Muse poured the dark rum into both glasses. Slow, deliberate, the liquid thick as venous blood under the lantern's dying glow. It caught the light in sullen ruby glints, promising warmth it could no longer deliver. "If the other worlds weigh too heavy," Vanner said, sliding one glass toward the skeletal captain, "I have tales from them that might lighten an old curse for a night." Karsh's skull tilted, the empty sockets two black wells that had swallowed every star they once reflected. "No, spare me the torment of seas I will never ride. The mists already whisper enough lies. Instead, let me give you a tale from when I still had flesh on these bones, when the name Karsh meant something more than a warning." He leaned forward, coat flapping like torn sails in the graveyard wind. The voice that scraped from his jaw was older than the island itself. "I was young then. The savage marauder flew under my command, a lean wolf of a ship, black-hulled and hungry. My men were wolves too, bellies empty and pockets emptier. Word came of a fat prize, a slave galleon bound for the fabled Spice Coasts, holds crammed with chained bodies meant to dig gold from some fat king's new colony. We took her at dawn. The water ran red before the sun cleared the horizon. I kept only a handful of the prisoners, the ones who swore they knew the way to richer plunder. The rest, we fed to the sea. Their screams were brief. The sharks made shorter work of the rest." Karsh's bony fingers traced the rim of his untouched glass. They led us to an island that smelled of rot and wet iron. Cannibals, painted in blood and shit, howling from the trees. We lost good men in the brush, cut open, roasted, eaten while they still twitched. But we found their village, and we found their gold. Piles of it, taken from gods knew how many broken ships and broken lives. I gave no quarter. A man who leaves enemies breathing leaves knives at his own back. We slaughtered them all, men, women, whelps. The smoke from their huts smelled like pork left too long on the spit. His skull turned toward the veiled sea, as if the memory still floated there. In the center of their cursed village stood a tree, black-barked, twisted, leaves like dried blood and veins. It drank the moonlight. I ordered it felled. From its wood, my carpenter fashioned a great chest, beautiful, dark as sin, smooth as a whore's thigh. We poured coin and jewels into it until the lid groaned. Then we sailed. Karsh's voice dropped, each word a rusted nail driven into rotten wood. On the first night, my quartermaster tried to divvy the shares. The chest would not empty. The more they scooped, the more it gave. Gold flowed like water from a slit artery. Glorious. We laughed like kings, until we noticed the marauder growing sluggish. She wallowed in calm seas as though dragging an anchor the size of a cathedral. The tree had been a god to those savages. By carving its flesh into our greed, we had taken its curse aboard. The more we stole from the chest, the heavier it became, and the ship with it. A low, rattling chuckle escaped the bones. I ordered it sealed, but discipline is a thin skin over hunger. They crept in the night like rats. Each coin they took chained us deeper. Then another ship found us, a rival reaver smelling easy meat. We fought like devils in a storm of splinters and screams. In the end, their captain knelt before me, bleeding from a dozen cuts. I did not kill him. I bought his ship and his crew with promises and a share of the endless gold. Then I tricked my own men. I left them aboard the captured prize with enough drink to dull their wits, while I and my new crew slipped away on the faster vessel. I christened her Savage Marauder 2 and never looked back. Karsh fell silent for a long moment. The surf gnawed the beach like teeth on bone. I should have learned then. Possessions possess you. Gold is a jealous god. It does not fill the hole. It widens it until a man falls through. But I was young, and the lesson only truly landed when the witch's curse bound me here to this rock. Years later, when the sea had claimed my flesh, I asked it what became of my old crew. The sea is cruel, but it answers true. Only one survived. He lived to a ripe old age, sired many children. The waves would not tell me his name. Vanner leaned back, the weight of the tale pressing on his chest like wet canvas. The rum in his glass suddenly tasted of ash. Karsh continued, almost wistful. I sailed on as a greater menace than before. If only someone had possessed the balls to teach me the lessons sooner. Perhaps I might have been something better than this. There is still time, Vanner said quietly. Even for the dead. Even for the damned. Karsh seized the bottle in a claw of yellow bone and upended it into the ruin of his mouth. Rum poured through the gaps in his teeth, splashing across vertebrae and tattered cloth, wasted as prayers in a storm. He set the bottle down with a hollow clack. Vanner raised his own glass, took a slow sip. The burn was good. Honest fire. He met the dead captain's gaze. Honestly then, if the curse broke tomorrow and you stood on a deck again, what would you do? The sockets flared with something ancient and bottomless. Karsh's voice rolled out low, cultured, velvet wrapped around a razor, the voice of a man who had once commanded empires of blood and still remembered how to wear civilization like a second skin. I would set every sail, summon every storm, and boil these seas until they screamed. I would bleed the skies themselves dry, paint the clouds crimson, and dance across the waves while nations drowned in their own entrails. I would take everything this world has denied me, every port, every fortune, every throat, and leave behind nothing but cockroaches and the sweet grey ash of all that once dared to flourish. The words hung in the salt air like smoke from a burning fleet. The lantern flame guttered lower, as though even the light feared to listen.
You're watching me when you should be reading Vanner Muse by author OSJ.